Marcus Chun had been dying for 3 weeks now, and he was getting pretty good at it. The former Earth Defense Force pilot sat on the rocky outcrop he claimed as his final resting place, watching the twin suns of the Kepler 442 system paint the barren landscape in shades of amber and gold. His oxygen reserves showed 18 hours remaining. His water had run out yesterday. The protein bars were gone 2 days ago. He'd picked this moon specifically because it was beautiful and completely uninhabited. No rescue teams would waste resources looking for him here. No well-meaning friends would try to talk him out of his decision. Just Marcus, the stunning view, and enough peace to let an old soldier fade away on his own terms. At 73, Marcus had outlived most of his squadron, buried 2 wives, and watched his daughter grow up to become a stranger who sent obligatory birthday messages from her new life on Proxima Centauri. His hands shook from the neural damage he'd picked up during the Centauri border war. His lungs wheezed from breathing recycled air on too many different worlds. His heart had already stopped twice in the past year. The doctors wanted to put him in a medical pod, hook him up to machines, maybe squeeze another decade out of his failing body. Marcus had different plans. He'd stolen his old fighter from a museum where it was on display. Well, stolen was a strong word. The security guard had been his former wingman, Tommy Rodriguez, who'd looked the other way while Marcus powered up the vintage craft and slipped out of Earth's atmosphere one last time. The fighter had enough fuel to reach this distant moon, but not enough to return. Perfect. Marcus pulled his jacket tighter against the thin atmosphere's chill and checked his tablet's display. Still no incoming signals. The emergency beacon was deliberately switched off. He'd chosen this spot well, far enough from any shipping lanes that no one would stumble across him by accident. A shooting star blazed across the purple sky, brighter than the others he'd been watching. Marcus smiled. Even the universe was putting on a show for his final performance. The shooting star grew brighter and bigger, and it wasn't following the trajectory of a meteor. Son of a bitch, Marcus muttered, struggling to his feet. His knees protested the movement, joints grinding like rusty hinges. The object in the sky was definitely artificial, definitely out of control, and definitely heading straight for his quiet little moon. The craft, if that's what it was, screamed overhead in a ball of fire and twisted metal. It impacted somewhere beyond the ridge line with a thunderous crash that shook the ground beneath Marcus's feet. A pillar of smoke and steam rose into the thin atmosphere. Marcus stood there for a long moment, weighing his options. He could ignore the crash, go back to his peaceful dying, and let whatever poor soul had crashed deal with their own problems. He had maybe 18 hours of air left, and hiking to a crash site would only burn through his reserves faster. On the other hand, 47 years of military training don't just disappear because you decide to die quietly. Damn it, he said to the empty landscape. Marcus gathered his meager supplies and started hiking toward the crash site. His legs were weak, his breathing labored, but his sense of duty was apparently stronger than his death wish. Some habits die harder than old pilots. The trek took him 2 hours across the rocky terrain. His oxygen gauge dropped to 15 hours. Every step sent jolts of pain through his arthritic joints, but he kept moving. If someone had survived the crash, they'd need help. If they hadn't, well, Marcus would at least know he'd tried. The crash site was impressive in its destruction. Whatever had fallen from the sky had gouged a furrow 300 meters long through the rocky soil before slamming into the base of a cliff. The craft itself was unlike anything Marcus had seen in his decades of military service. It was roughly the size of a small Corvette, but its hull was composed of some kind of dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly with blue-white energy. The overall design was sleek and organic, more grown than built, and it was definitely not human technology. Marcus approached carefully, his hand instinctively reaching for the sidearm he'd worn for most of his adult life. He'd left the weapon back on Earth, of course. Hard to shoot yourself peacefully with spectators around. Steam hissed from cracks in the alien hull. The glow from those strange symbols pulsed irregularly, like a dying heartbeat. Marcus could hear sounds from inside, mechanical whirring, electronic beeping, and something that might have been voices. He found what looked like an airlock about halfway along the vessel's length. The door had been twisted partially open by the impact, revealing a gap just wide enough for a determined human to squeeze through. Marcus paused at the threshold. Entering an alien spacecraft was probably not the safest way to spend his final hours. Then, again, safe hadn't been his style for the past 7 decades. He squeezed through the gap. The interior was a maze of corridors and chambers, all designed for beings considerably larger than humans. The ceiling was nearly 3 meters high, and Marcus felt like a child exploring a grown-up's house. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows along the walls, and that same blue-white energy pulsed through conduits that ran like veins throughout the ship. Marcus followed the sounds deeper into the vessel. His portable atmosphere scanner showed the air was breathable, though rich in nitrogen, and carrying traces of compounds he couldn't identify. He risked removing his helmet, taking a cautious breath. The air tasted metallic and slightly sweet, but it didn't kill him. Progress. The sounds grew louder as he moved toward what he assumed was the command center. Marcus could definitely hear voices now. Not human voices, but something electronic and artificial. An AI, maybe, or some kind of automated system. He rounded a corner and found himself in a large chamber filled with control consoles, holographic displays, and a central command chair that could have seated a being twice his height. Most of the displays were dark or flickering, showing damage from the crash. And floating in the center of the room was a sphere of that same blue-white energy, about the size of a basketball, pulsing and crackling with apparent frustration. "Oh, perfect," the sphere said in accented English, its voice carrying a distinctly feminine tone despite the electronic distortion. A primitive native. This day just keeps getting better. Marcus blinked. "You speak English?" "I speak everything, you walking collection of carbon and bad decisions. Universal translator built right into my consciousness matrix. Very convenient for insulting inferior species in their own languages." The AI's voice dripped with sarcasm and barely contained irritation. Marcus had served under commanding officers with better attitudes, but not many. "I'm Marcus," he said, figuring politeness couldn't hurt. "I saw your ship crash." "Oh, did you? How observant. I suppose you also noticed that we're currently stranded on a barren rock in the middle of nowhere with no hope of rescue." "Well, yes, actually. Brilliant. Simply brilliant. My pilot gets himself killed in the stupidest possible way. My ship is held together by prayer and spite, and my only potential help is a geriatric native who probably thinks this vessel runs on magic." Marcus bristled. "I'm a retired military pilot with 47 years of experience. I might be old, but I'm not stupid." The AI's sphere pulsed brighter, and Marcus could swear it was studying him more carefully. "Military pilot?" The voice carried a note of interest beneath the sarcasm. "What type of craft?" "Fighters, mostly. Some transport work. I flew everything from atmospheric interceptors to deep space patrol boats." The AI circled him slowly, its energy field humming. "You're not completely useless, then. Tell me, ancient flyboy, how long do you expect to survive on this delightful vacation destination?" Marcus checked his oxygen gauge. "About 14 hours, give or take." "Perfect. My own situation is somewhat more optimistic. My power core is damaged, but functional. My life support systems are operating at 20% efficiency, and my hyperspace drive has been reduced to very expensive scrap metal. I estimate I can maintain basic functions for perhaps 72 hours before complete system failure." They stared at each other for a moment. The dying human and the sarcastic AI, both stranded on a moon that nobody else in the galaxy cared about. "You know," Marcus said slowly, "I came here to die peacefully." "Well, congratulations. You're about to get your wish, just with more company than you planned." Marcus laughed, surprising himself. He'd forgotten what it felt like to find something genuinely funny. "What's your name?" "Arya. Adaptive reconnaissance and intelligence assistant."